Matt, I'm going to come to you. There's no other way I can read this other than that is not the way you behave. If you've already made up your mind, you are taking someone else. That is a lot of trouble to go to for a team that has already made up its mind, is taking Mac Jones and is just going, doing the due diligence. This feels like a lot more than that to me. Matt, you've been around it a long time. What does it feel like to you?
Yeah, it does. It feels like to me they went to the car lot with a certain car in mind, but they're looking at a couple others just to make sure there's not something better out there. I think when they made that trade up to number 3 overall, they had an idea of who they liked. But there has been a lot of time since then until now. It's been a lot of time since Trey Lance's first pro day on March 12th. That feels like it was centuries ago at this point. So I do believe when the Niners made that trade from 12 to 3, Kyle Shanahan felt comfortable enough with a quarterback, most likely Mac Jones, to make that trade. But now you have to go into these pro days with an open mind. You have to go look at Trey Lance today and say, hey, you guys did a great job with a highlight package. This is a quarterback who did not throw an interception in 2019, 28 touchdowns in the air, 12 on the ground. He's everything you want in a modern quarterback, just a limited number of starts. So you have to go in today with an open mind to say, maybe this is the type of quarterback we need in this Shanahan offense.
Okay, so I agree with what you're saying in principle, but I disagree with your point. If you know who's not going to this today? Jacksonville and the Jets, because they've made up their mind. So if you've made up your mind, you don't have an open mind. So Dominique, he used the car lot example. We used a restaurant earlier. Any analogy you want to make? If you've made up your mind, you've made up your mind. Obviously, Dominique, the 49ers haven't.
Yeah, I think you're right. And maybe these other teams like the Jaguars and the Jets should be there too. Maybe they should not have made up their mind yet because you don't have to. More information is not better. And I got to give kudos to Matt because his analogy, the car light analogy, I think it beats your restaurant analogy, Greeny. I hate to break it to you, but that was a good one. Because I understand showing up to a car light, like I got my eye on this particular car. Then you show up and you see something like, hey, I like that. Let me give it a test drive. I don't have to make this decision right now. So I like the idea of them getting as much information as possible. And I have to be honest, as impressive as Trey Lance's highlights are something about those highlights give me some pause because I look at the end zone and it says Penguins. Like he's playing against Youngstown State. Like let's relax. Let's calm it down a little bit. He's balling against Penguins. It's hard for me to get too excited about that tape.
Okay, so that is obviously one of the questions, is the level of competition that he has faced. But I have to take umbrage. His analogy is not better than my analogy, and let me tell you why. Tim Hasselbeck, I will give this to you. I will strengthen my restaurant analogy. If you have chosen to go to a particular restaurant exclusively because they have a particular dish, it's the only reason you're going there in the first place, then you don't need to look at the menu. The 49ers didn't have the 3rd pick in the draft because they were the 3rd worst team. They traded up to get there. They chose to go to this restaurant, and if they did, because they have one particular dish that they have to go up there to get, then they're not asking for a menu when they get there and trying to figure out if they want to change it. Hasselbeck, what do you think?
Sure, yeah, and I don't know if this fits into the restaurant analogy, Greeny, but I would say this. I think you're right. Maybe sometimes you're just being polite because you're like, no, I might consider the daily special. Like, tell me about it. Maybe I will order it. But I think they did that. Truthfully, I think they did that at Alabama's pro day. That's what I think. So I think we all kind of are sitting here and we're saying, well, why are they doing this with Trey Lance? You know why? Because maybe that's the entree that they were planning on ordering all along. Maybe that's why. It just happened to be that Alabama's pro day was prior to that. So for me, listen, restaurant analogy or not, I've never really felt like Mac Jones was the pick. I don't think you do what they did to go up and get Mac Jones. I know this kind of wasn't where we were planning on going with it, but I don't think they did. I think they were doing it for somebody else, and I think just the way the calendar of events has gone on, you're able to go make a big deal about Mac Jones, because guess what? That pro day and those pro days are littered with other players and information that you may draft. So I think that's why this is happening personally, which is why it makes more sense than, doing everything you've done and still going to this pro day if Mac Jones is the pick, to your point about what Jacksonville and the New York Jets are doing.
Yeah. Yeah,
Go
I
ahead,
think
Nate.
Tim's right, and I think Tim's right, and I also think in reading Tim Kuhn's piece about Trey Lance, it's another important part. We all focus on Trey Lance's physical ability because it's super impressive, but Trey Lance was breaking down NFL film as a freshman in college because he wasn't getting enough time on the field. He needed something to do. So I think the mental part of the game that we all laud about Mac Jones, it appears to me that Trey Lance might have that also. So I think he is probably the perfect pick for the 49ers right there. He has that mental aspect combined with that running ability and strong arm. It's hard to imagine Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch looking at those two players and deciding to go with Mac Jones. So I think you're right. They decided on his entree a while ago, and they just listened to the special with Mac Jones. They're still going to go with the entree that they want. And, Greeny, that's just a little respect for you because it's your show. We're going to lean on your weak analogy.
No, it's a good analogy. His father, by the way, for those that don't know, Trey Lance's father was a defensive back in the Canadian Football League, so he has been around the sport forever. But let me add to the analogy, okay? And Matt Miller, I'll come back to you because you deal with this stuff all the time. It is one thing to say, all right, to just sort of say, let me hear about the special. I'll just humor you. But that's not what they're doing. They're going into the kitchen. They're asking the chef exactly what the ingredients are.
Right.
They're designing the special for them. They're going much farther. My analogy rules, Dominic. I don't know what you're talking about. It perfectly encapsulates the situation that is going on here. And I've been saying it for months, Matt Miller, to people like you. Trey Lance is the guy that they went up there to get. As Hasselbeck said, it's the only one that makes sense. Go ahead, Matt.
It's the only one who makes sense to us, but what ultimately matters is Kyle Shanahan. And I think, Graziano could point to this. Almost everyone you talk to in the NFL still believes that Mac Jones will be the pick. I mean, it is overwhelmingly that is the case when you talk to people connected to the league, people connected to the 49ers, other teams, agents. And let's remember, Justin Fields, they also asked John Beck to do this. And we don't believe that there's a chance they'll take Justin Fields. So the Niners have done this with all the quarterbacks. Zach Wilson works with John Beck. John Beck's making a lot of money off of the 49ers this offseason with that connection. Very happy for him. But they're asking every quarterback to do this. So, yes, we want to read into the fact that they've asked Trey Lance to do this today. They asked Justin Fields to do it last week as well, guys.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.